Welcome to the Leadership Lounge, your go-to podcast for insightful conversations, expert advice, and strategies to elevate your leadership. I'm your host, Karie Millspaw, best-selling author, award-winning motivational speaker, and executive leadership coach. In my profession, I've seen firsthand the daily stresses executives face and how, together, we've overcome these challenges with expert guidance. Whether you're a seasoned leader, aspiring executive, or entrepreneur, this show is for those ready to lead with impact and purpose. This isn't just about theory, it's about practical, real-life application. Tune in for inspiring stories, actionable advice, and leadership lessons you can implement right away to drive success in your career and organization. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Leadership Lounge. And today in my hot seat, I have Ashley Rudolph. She is a leadership coach and a former tech VP, which we'll talk a little bit about that. She helps top executives and founders grow their careers and lead with clarity. She's known for her bold strategic approach and has been featured in Inc. and Success magazine, which I think is pretty cool, U.S. News and World Report, and the New York Post. So welcome, Ashley, to the Leadership Lounge. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so excited for our conversation. Thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. And as we're recording this, it's Good Friday, Easter weekend. It was one of those things that I thought I had the day off, and then there was other meetings showing up. But so this is a perfect tail end of the week into the weekend.
Yes.
For the holiday. So I'm so grateful to have you here. So I want to just jump in. I work with executives as well. People that listen to this podcast are leaders. I just was kind of spying on your own bio and doing some research in the back end. I saw that you were not just a former tech VP, but you went from IC to VP in 5 years. So let me kind of circle back to that for a minute. First of all, what does IC stand for in your world of where you worked?
Yes. Great question. So IC is an individual contributor. So we would just use that generally for people who had no direct reports. So
good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it all the time. I don't know. And it's different for every organization too.
It is. Yeah.
Is it an independent contractor? What are you?
Yeah, exactly. So individual contributors, some people may assign that name by a level or something, like you're a level 1 or a level 2. But I see. Yeah. Yep.
So how did you do that? I mean, 5 years, girl. That's a climb.
Yeah.
How long was that ladder? Let's be realistic.
There were some leaps there for sure. And I would say that there were 2 things that were happening for me at that point in my career. So the first 6 years of my career, I call that my learning phase. So that was post-college. I was exploring. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was in marketing, but I wasn't quite passionate about the industries that I was working in or the functional roles that I was doing. And something was calling to me. I was in New York at the time. There was a burgeoning tech scene. It was Silicon Valley on the West Coast, and New York was Silicon Alley.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And there were all these tech startups popping up. And I was just drawn to that. So I basically DM'd a bunch of people on LinkedIn. This was 2013, 2014, and had a bunch of coffee chats with people that worked in tech in New York. And that's how I broke into the tech industry. And something clicked. So I was in a role that was operations related, which was clearly the work that I was called to at that point in time. And then I was in tech, and that was exciting. And for the first time in my career, those 2 things made sense to me. And I just worked incredibly hard because I was just so passionate about everything that I was doing. And that was basically the start of my climb. And the first year in my role as a program manager, I was at work sometimes on the weekends, or I was working long days because I just wanted to learn everything about my lane. And that translated into me becoming the manager of all program managers globally. Our company had 13 locations at the time. By the time I left, there were 21. And I was the person who helped them scale that from the 13 to the 21 locations, more programs, all of those things. And I think what really happened was it was a perfect combination of something I was passionate about and a good use of the skills that I had.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
How fun. The nugget I want to take away is that you utilize LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. It's
Yes.
it's such a
Yes.
great professional networking
It
platform,
really is.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't have that icky vibe other social media platforms have.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a great professional networking tool. And, sometimes coffee chats, especially now in the context that we have,
Mm,
they have a bad rap. But I think if you do it intentionally and strategically, that you can still connect with people that maybe you don't know and you can learn something from them and you can also offer value to them. But I wholeheartedly believe in that strategy.
I do too. I can
Yeah.
be closed off because you get a lot
Yeah.
of those in-mails. And
Yes.
one,
Yes.
the one time I decided to let my guard down for 5 seconds and actually take up
Yeah.
someone on a chat, ended up being
Yeah.
one of my closest friends, long
Yeah.
term. So you look back and
Yeah.
go,
Oh my God, that's
why
amazing.
would you
Yeah.
ever shut down an opportunity for someone to
Yeah.
be in your corner, just supporting you? We were
Totally.
aligned
Yes.
in the same type of demographic. So I guess someone
Yeah.
could say, oh, that's your competition. No, we're aligned because we
Yeah.
see things the same. We're going after the same target audience. We have a similar
Totally.
messaging. We can support one another, maybe
Yeah.
collaborate at some point. So yeah,
Yeah.
by all means, I love the plug for LinkedIn because I'm such a fan, and it's
Yes.
made a huge difference for my own clients just to stay relevant, stay connected.
Yes.
Jobs are not promised or secure.
Nope.
Always keep
Yeah.
yourself out there, and
Yeah.
staying on top of things. So very cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're also a LinkedIn fan
Yes,
too.
yes, I
Yeah.
am. Very much so, and I'm always putting it out there. It takes a while, like it's one of those untapped resources you don't think about. I think I joined it back in, geez, 2008,
Yeah. Yeah.
2007,
Yeah.
2008. It was that long ago.
Yeah.
I had a career coach at the time, and I was just had, my daughter was little at the time, just a 4-year old, and I wanted to really get back out there in the career world. And she's like, there's this platform. I was a fan ever since. So huge
Yeah.
plug for that,
Yeah.
by all means.
Yeah.
Make sure
Yeah.
if you're on LinkedIn, you're looking
Yeah.
up Ashley.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think, I've always been a LinkedIn user, but most recently, when I jumped into being a coach, I had a LinkedIn coach who shared a piece of data with me. And I think she said something like only 1% of users on the platform actually post content on
What?
LinkedIn. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my.
and which was mind blowing to me. So it's also great if you're a
Hmm.
professional and you're trying to build a personal brand, right? Like you're one of few users on the platform that are actually putting yourself out there. So it's
Wow,
such a valuable
1%.
tool. Yeah,
And we feel like the competition's so great, but when you put it in
you
those
do.
terms,
Yeah,
like, get
yeah,
yourself out there. And I don't
yeah.
know if you feel the same way, but I feel like you should have a personal brand whether you're working for yourself or working for someone else. I mean, you've got to
Oh,
be,
totally.
when you show
Yeah,
yourself as a thought leader, it just creates,
yes.
more credibility of who you are as a
Yeah,
person.
you absolutely should. And I have a story for this. So
Please share.
yeah. So when I was working in the tech industry, I did not realize that I was building a personal brand, but your personal brand exists when people think about you and what do they know you for. So whether or not you are putting a story out there, people are forming a story about you. And at that time, I was like a really hard worker, very results oriented, just known for running really, I would say, high performing teams that were excited about the work that they were doing. So that was the story that people were telling about me that I did not know. So when I transitioned into coaching, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on an island. I need to reconnect with people who I worked with, who I enjoyed working with. And they said yes to that catch up conversation, even though we hadn't talked in 7 years or 8 years or, what may have you. And they were interested in hearing, okay, well, what is Ashley doing now? Because I know her to be this thing and she's shifted. And that
Mm-hmm.
was because of the personal brand. And then two, when we were talking, I even got some initial clients from those conversations because they were like, yep, I'm familiar with your work. I know the quality that you work at, and I actually do trust you with my team members. So I'm going to send you some clients. And whether you know it or not, whether you're like broadcasting these statements about yourself on LinkedIn, you still are building a personal
Yes.
brand, and how you show up at work ends up being that brand.
I love that. And it's just like, do you want to build a brand by default because that's what happens?
Uh-huh.
Or do you want to be
Yep.
intentional about it?
Yes, exactly that.
And
Oh my
yeah,
God, I love that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
because everyone, you're going to be found if someone Googles you or searches you on any search engine
Yes.
at some point, some way,
Yes.
unless you're just Mary Smith and you have the most basic name ever. It's going to be a little challenging to stand out. But
Right. Right.
overall, I think it was Allie Brown, who I've always loved as a mentor from back in the day. I'm really dating myself here in the industry, but she said,
Yeah.
if you don't write your story, Google will write it for you. And it's true.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes.
You
It
got to be
is
intentional about
very
it.
true. Yeah. Yeah. Intentionality. That's like the one thing that I'm walking away from this conversation with.
Yes. Right. What do I want to be known for?
Yes. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to pivot a little bit. So you climb the ladder, probably in heels. I'm just kidding. Just
Yeah, there's a whole story about that, how I worked in tech, and when I first started, I was like, woo, I could show up to work in a t-shirt and jeans. And at a
right.
certain point, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, maybe I should dress for the level that I want to be at.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're right. I did probably do some of it in heels.
Isn't that the truth, though?
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
the work from home, and I always joke and say I worked from home way before COVID made it cool. Like I've
Yeah.
been doing
Yes.
this
Yeah.
like a decade in or more, longer now.
Yeah.
But you do get kind of comfortable. It's like,
Hmm.
eh, who cares?
Yeah.
But then you got the event in person. You're like, yes, I can pull my heels out and a skirt and
Yeah.
a few other things and look different today. But
Yeah.
it is true. It's not even just dressing. It's the mindset too of
It is
what
the
do I want
mindset.
to be? How
Yeah.
do I?
Yeah.
And then being that first before the promotion or the title or whatever else that shows up is so key
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can
It
go
is
all over
everything.
life in general. But so
Yes.
you you pivoted directions. I think I'm
Yes.
sure I'm going to guess that the confidence that showed up in scaling that ladder showed up in other
Hmm.
ways too, career wise,
Yeah.
of what else is
Yeah. Yeah.
possible in your life. So how
Yeah.
did you make that transition from leaving the tech world and into the land where you get to everyone thinks is so glamorous? Choose whatever you want. You can be your
Yes.
own boss.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So when I was choosing, I think this is interesting too. So when I went out on my own, I actually thought that I would be an operations consultant because I was an operator. And I was like, people are going to hire me to fix their operations, whatever that means. And I had played with this idea. And when I was talking to my former coworkers and other people that they had connected me with, I'm good at reading people. And I think the reactions were, okay, that's nice. That makes sense. Not great in terms of a reaction. But when I talked about coaching, or when some people were like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. This is more of what you've already done. But I actually have a team of people that are like you in my company and who I think could benefit from your coaching to help get them to the next level. That's when people started lighting up. And that's when it felt like less of a, I am selling you on this service, and more of a, okay, we're already on the same page. Well, here's what I can do, or here's what we can do if we partner together. So the way that I came to what I was doing was like part stepping into the unknown and thinking that it would go a certain way. And then the other part was actually listening to what my potential customers,
Mhm.
clients, like what the market was telling me. And what they were telling me was that like there was a space for me as a coach and specifically me focusing on high achievers.
Yes. So that's your
Yeah.
demographics. So it's
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I work with high achieving leaders, you know, people that were maybe always A students or maybe or maybe weren't, but were smart and just needed to find the right outlet for their intelligence, their creativity, like their expertise. But yeah, ambitious,
yes.
high performing, high achieving
Yes. I know
folks.
those
Yeah,
type.
yeah,
They
yeah,
generally have a bucket list of some sort. They generally were in sports sometimes,
yep,
that's kind of the
yep,
thing, or,
exactly.
what else
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
do? What else can I achieve? Looking for that next challenge.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. They have that competitive edge.
Yep.
Sometimes their biggest competitor is themselves.
Yep.
Sometimes it's other people. Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yep. And
They're,
I can
they're,
like speak so fluently about it because that was also me. So
mhm.
I'm
Yep.
also
I can
talking about
relate.
myself.
Yep. I can relate. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm just competing against my own personal best. I couldn't care less what
Yeah.
other people are doing.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to really light a fire or a strong one anyway, too much under that personality type. They're already,
No.
just driven
Yeah.
naturally.
Exactly. They're already driven and they know where they want to go, but sometimes they're stuck on how to get there or they're trying the same things that made them successful, like when they earned their manager promotion or their director promotion, but
Mhm.
they're just not getting to VP. And they're like,
Right.
okay, I know I have the capability, I can do this, but I don't know what I need to do to get to that next level.
Is that where you find yourself playing the most in your work, is getting that person to the next level in their career?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is basically the majority of my
Okay.
work, I would say, is helping people get to the next level. So that could be a promotion, it could be a change in careers,
Hmm.
even. Let's say they've been thinking about changing industries, but they
Right.
don't know what that looks like, or they don't know how to position themselves in a way that leads to them being able to change industries. So, yeah, yeah. Whenever someone is like ready for the next phase of their
Hmm.
career, that's when they end up talking to me, or maybe they entered that phase. So they got the promotion, but they're like, oh, now that I'm here, I don't know.
Right. All
How
the
do I be
imposter
successful?
syndrome
Yeah,
stuff starts to show up, all those
exactly.
self-doubt stories in your brain.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I do want
The
to mention
questioning.
that Ashley
Yeah.
has a free career influence diagnostic, which will include that link in the show notes too. I think it's kind of fun to just probably
Yeah.
explore that. And it doesn't matter how old you are. That's the thing.
No, it doesn't.
I was just listening to a Mel Robbins podcast about,
Yeah.
these time markers we put on ourselves. We've got to have everything figured out
Yeah.
by 20, no, by 30, by 40, by 50.
No.
And I worked with so many early 50s, late 40s people that are like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like they're literally still
Yeah.
pivoting, because you're
Yeah.
exploring and learning new things. Stop putting
Yeah.
yourself in this box that has to have everything all
No,
figured out. It's never too
you
late for a
don't.
do over by any
Exactly.
means. So it's kind of
Exactly. You
fun
can
that,
continue.
yes.
Yeah, you can continue asking yourself those questions throughout your career, and you will still have some version of that question even when you retire, because it's like, okay, well, what is the next phase of my life? Like, what do
Yeah,
I want it to look like?
right,
So yeah,
right.
yeah,
Same questions, just different landscape, it's just a little different.
exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly. Ah, yeah, I
I
love
want
that
to,
framing.
you've got some good content for us, and I'm looking forward to kind of unpacking this. You have the 3 C's of leadership.
Yep.
Leadership to me is like, I always say, you first got to prove you can lead yourself before you can jump into leading
Yes.
others.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
If you
Yes.
can't hold yourself accountable, how are you going to hold anybody else accountable?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
you know,
Yeah,
and I know that's a
exactly.
conversation in itself. But share with me
Yes.
what your perspective of leadership is with your 3 C's. Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah. So I'm happy to, and I get really excited when I talk about this. So I'll give some context and then I'll jump into it. So for me, in working with clients and also reflecting back on my own career, I noticed a pattern in some of the leaders that were the most successful in terms of like who I had worked with, what was going right for them, what wasn't. I'm a huge observer, and that's how I learned a lot in my career. I just watched what other people were doing, but specifically the people who were successful, like what were their habits. And I noticed that people who could do these three things really well were strong leaders. So the three C's of leadership are context, content, and confidence. And I'm going to start with content because I think that most people have this one down pat, honestly. So content is being a subject matter expert. So that
Mhm.
is knowing your lane very well. And knowing your lane gives you credibility. Like that was what I spent when I got into tech. That's what I spent the first 2 years doing was knowing my lane so well that I could talk about it in my sleep. Or like
Right.
I was just
Mhm.
on, cruise control there. Um, and it's not just about what you know. When you know your lane incredibly well, that gives you the opportunity to know when to improvise, to know when to adapt, to know how to respond in real time because you know your area. So investing time in doing that was something that I saw like the leaders who stood out were able to do well. And I feel like people have experienced this in meetings when there's always a person who it's like you can ask them a question in the meeting and maybe 8 times out of 10 they'll have a really great solid answer for you, and then the 2 times out of 10 they're able to say like, yep, I don't know that and I'll get back to you. But then you've also been in a meeting where every single question that you ask someone they're like, I have to check my team or I have to ask someone else, and it's like, okay, you
Mhm.
lead this department, but you're not coming with any perspectives. And
Yeah.
that's not quite, we talked about the professional brand. That doesn't help your professional brand. So the second one is context. And again, I noticed that great leaders know how to tailor their message to the right audiences.
Mm.
And I know we've also experienced the executive that can only talk up here, like
Mhm.
the 10,000-foot view, but they cannot break it down, right? So it may be brilliant in terms of their ideas or the vision that they have, but it just doesn't translate to the team. And they have an organization that's not inspired
Right.
by the mission. So context is really about being able to translate your message to different audiences. Leadership isn't one size fits all. And you have to be able to know that, like, what may land with a CEO just may not land with a manager of a department. And, it's knowing how to talk to those different audiences. And then the last one is confidence. So, this one is interesting because a lot of people just think that confidence is like who you are, how you show up. And
Right.
I don't believe that. One of my friends, Lissy Alden, she founded this company called Mindy. And I just love the way that she puts it. She says, confidence is just proof that you can do a task. And that's what I believe too. So, confidence is really about creating the conditions for yourself to succeed and knowing exactly what you need to show up as the most confident version of yourself. So, for some people, it's preparation. So, if you notice that you are more confident in a meeting when you take 10 minutes to prepare beforehand, then you better do that. Right? Like,
Right.
you probably can't wing it. So, you need to know what you need to do to be your most confident self because, again, like leaders that are confident just have a stronger professional brand. It kind of shows to people that you're confident in the direction, you know what you're talking about, you are confident that you can figure out the solution even if you don't know it, right? So it's about creating those conditions for yourself.
I love that. I was just thinking through. I'm like, that was my first meeting of today.
Yeah.
Things were bouncing around in my head. I'm like, get your your little work stream stuff together
Yeah.
here, Karie, your checklist.
Yes.
And then you're like, bring it. Like, I'm early. Where is
Yes.
everybody?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And just taking that little time. I'm a preparation person too, but
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to not over prepare.
Right.
But just like taking 5 minutes to jot down ideas and being like, okay, yep, great. I'm ready for this conversation. That could make a big difference.
Right.
Yeah.
It does 100%. And again,
Yeah.
they all have to kind of come together, because if you
Yes.
don't know your swim lane,
Yeah.
you don't know much
Yeah.
about any of the conversation going into a meeting, just as an example. You're
Exactly.
going to look like
Exactly.
a deer in the headlights. Like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what's
Yes.
going on.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know. I don't have anything in front
Yeah.
of me. I feel unprepared. All the things start to
Uh-huh.
come through. And even though you're the most confident person ever in that,
Yep.
20-minute meeting, you could have looked like, a train wreck.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So those are how those things play
they
together. And
do.
it seems very simple, but honestly, I think the best things are overly simplified. Like sometimes the basics are the basics. So I just like to like drive the 3 C's home to
Right.
my clients or myself even. But they've been really helpful for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are good. So it's content,
Mm-hmm.
context, and
Yep.
confidence. Okay.
Yep.
Making sure I've got the
Exactly.
3. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Very
That's
nice.
it.
I like how
Yeah.
that plays in.
Yeah.
A lot of people see kind of that mindset of a leader in their head. Maybe it's just my head. I'll take full ownership.
Maybe it's mine too. I'm waiting for where you're going with this.
Right. Like, leadership in your head sometimes is that dictator type boss you had in,
Yeah.
once upon a time, or
Yeah.
someone that's just really good at delegating a lot of activities and then walking away,
Yeah.
like, oh, here you
Yeah.
go. You do this, do that. Boom, I'm out.
Yeah.
Where that's old Carrie's version, where new
Yeah.
version of it is, you don't even have to tell a person your title to have that leadership stance. It's just an energy
Yes.
you give off, a vibe
Yes.
that
Yes.
is, and I've worked with so many different executives with multiple titles and all
Yeah.
over the ladder and then some in the org
Yeah.
charts, where
Yep.
some just exude it
Yeah.
regardless of the title. And there's others that are just floundering over here, and you're wondering,
Yeah.
when is everyone else going to see what I'm seeing? Are
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
mismatched for the role? Like, it's
Right.
not so
What's
good.
not
Yeah.
clicking
So
here?
I really
Yeah.
truly believe you can adapt a leadership, just energy way before the title shows up, way before
Oh, I believe
the
that too.
promotion, and then some.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, even when I think about my own trajectory, I was doing the work of the next level before I
Mhm.
was promoted there. And it was just about me being pushed and mentored into it. Like I had a fantastic manager who was the COO, and he pushed me past what I thought were my limits, right? And yeah, it was about showing up as the next level before I actually got there a lot of the time. And sometimes it felt uncomfortable. And sometimes I was surrounded by peers who were kind of like, well, no one's listening to me because I don't have the title. And it's
Mhm.
like, nope. People don't listen to titles. They
Right.
listen to people.
Right.
And,
Yep.
yeah. And even sometimes CEOs aren't effective when they just say, I'm the boss. Yeah, they can make the decision. And,
Right.
you know, if you run it, if you like have a run in with them, it may not go well, but the best leaders just know how to wield their influence in such a way that their teams listen to them.
It's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
So true. I mean, if you can give off this energy of weakness, or I don't care, I'm kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wishy-washy, I don't stand for anything, and you have
Yeah.
this big title and a paycheck
Yeah.
to back it up, but
Yeah.
is your team, how confident are they in you? Is there a level of
Yeah.
respect there? Do they feel
Yeah.
safe you leading them to that next level,
Yeah.
or whatever that next quarter even looks like? There's so much
Exactly.
that comes from just the feedback of the team you are leading. And I
Yeah.
always encourage leaders to don't be afraid to find out the feedback. Even if
No,
it has to be anonymous,
don't.
that's fine because people generally are more transparent when they are
Yeah.
anonymously giving feedback. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid of it though.
Don't
It's
be
going to
afraid of
make a
it.
difference.
Dig
Yeah, it's
in.
going to change how you lead. Huge,
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
stuff.
And people they will tell you again. Yeah. Sometimes people need like the protection of, or the freedom of being able to say something anonymously.
Yeah.
And you will see it in the feedback. And I think another thing you will see in the feedback is maybe if you're a leader who is well liked, but not necessarily holding people accountable to do
Mhm.
the work or pushing them, you may see that a team loves the person, but are there comments about their ability to do the work or
Right.
their ability to feel like they can be successful in their jobs? And I've seen that sometimes where it's like, we love this manager, but
Mhm.
it's someone else's fault why this department is ineffective.
Right.
And it's like, no, there's something happening
Right.
here as well that needs to be addressed.
Right. You can be
Yeah.
liked, and then those
Yeah.
same executives, because I've worked with them, they're like, I can't get my team to do anything.
Yeah.
Why are they always
Yeah.
waiting last minute
Exactly.
on their deliverables? Why am I
Yeah.
invisible over here? But they
Yep.
love to, have those Friday chats about
Yep.
football games and weekends and things of that nature. But when it
Yeah.
comes to holding them
Yeah.
accountable, they're a little weaker in that department.
Yeah.
I always say
Totally.
strive for
Yeah.
respect over being liked every day,
Yes.
because respect
Yes.
is not going to waver with emotion like being liked is.
hmm
It's just
Nope.
there.
No, it's not. Yeah. And you can say the hard things when people
Mhm.
respect you,
Yeah,
right? But you won't say the hard things if what you care about is people liking you.
right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
it's true. It's true. You go
Yeah.
soft in some stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Given the type of client you work with, we mentioned
hmm
about the ambitious side.
Yeah.
Do you think people are just born ambitious? Can you find
Ooh.
this wiring within somebody? Can you pull it out? What's been your experience
Oh.
so far?
Oh, interesting. I have never been asked that question.
I'm still like, I'm a junkie when it comes to how people are wired. It's like so fascinating to
Yeah.
me.
Yes. So I will tell you that every single client I work with is ambitious. And if I ask them this question and it comes up, sometimes when we're just talking about them
Hmm.
and who they are, they will probably tell me some version of, I've always been this way. And whether that is them striving to get the A in school or whether it's been like the type of kids that they were where they knew
Hmm.
what they wanted and they went after it, they would all say that. So maybe there is something to it where ambitious people or ambition is innate. I actually don't know. And I think it's fair for me to say, I don't know what my opinion is, but I will say that my clients have all described them always being this way.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that they struggle with more so is as a result of them always feeling this way, some of them feel guilty for wanting to be ambitious or being ambitious. And they're just like, why do I want more? Or am I allowed to feel like I want
Hmm.
more? I'm a VP and my peers aren't at this level yet. So who am I to want to be
Yeah,
in the C suite? Like, is it too much?
right.
Or this job is good, but I know I can do more or I
Hmm.
can go for a different role. But who am I to
Yes.
have this ambition when I should just be happy with what I have? And I think that that's such an interesting paradox.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've worked with so many different personalities over the years.
yeah,
And I know a lot of it innates from childhood anyway. That's how we're
yeah,
programmed. That's where our beliefs come from.
yeah,
All of that, those layers, when you peel them back, were they, the
yes,
firstborn, that leadership style shows up.
yes,
Very
yes,
competitive. Is there a
yeah,
common denominator there? Or
yep,
you're always trying to prove to dad you can do it and he's not paying attention, like,
yep, yep,
because there's
yeah.
so many layers to the young and you could peel
Oh,
it
that's so
back,
fascinating. Yeah,
and
yeah,
just go,
yes,
are you trying to prove something here?
yes,
Because one thing I've
yes.
noticed with ambitious clients is they do burn out at times.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So then
And
we
I
have to
can
have
speak to
that
that from personal
conversation.
experience. Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think the one thing that kind of breaks that orientation is when we do the work of reconnecting to like themselves and
Mm-hmm.
what they value, right? So if you are telling me, and I talked to another coach about this, whose name is James Bryant, and he does something similar, but like if you're telling me that your top 5 values are family, friends, I don't know, time off, connection, or what may have you, let's say it's those. But when we look at your calendar and it's work, 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 work,
Mm-hmm.
are you actually like making time for the things that you value the most? And if you say that you value those things, then what changes are we going to start to make so that you
Right.
can start prioritizing yourself and maybe not prioritizing your ambition or your ego or that
Mm-hmm.
desire for more to prove something?
Right.
And you can do that. You actually can give yourself permission to do that, but sometimes people don't feel like they can give themselves permission to prioritize themselves.
Right. It is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll drive, that inner drive will almost break them because they just want to
Yeah.
get to that next level so badly.
Yeah.
I think it was the
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
you can find out a lot about a person's value by where they spend their time and money. And look at their bank
Yes.
statement.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right there. The dollars.
Everything kind of sheds a little light. But yeah, I call myself a recovered workaholic because I had
Oh
so
yeah.
much self-identity
Yeah.
tied to my
Yeah.
work
Yes.
that it was like such a natural default, wake up, open the laptop, wake up, open the laptop, that I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn a new identity, create,
Yeah.
like, no one's going to die, Karie, if you unplug for the weekend.
Nope. Nope. Yeah.
In fact,
Right.
you can
Right.
and I had a great mentor in a past business. I was his publicist for years and worked with him in a global business coaching company, who said,
Yeah.
read the book, Sharpen the Saw. And I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Ooh.
Like,
I haven't heard of that one.
yeah, just
Oh my
learning to
gosh.
just take
I
the
need that one.
weekend to just chill and sharpen the saw. So
Yeah.
Monday morning, you are sharp, ready, even twice as
Yes.
productive, if not more, than you would
Yeah.
have been if you just kept trying to stay plugged in all weekend, trying to get one more
Oh
email
my
done, one more
gosh.
thing
Yeah.
done. And I did
Yes.
notice a huge difference.
Yes.
I think I was at the time, this was a while ago, 2012 maybe,
Okay.
where
Yep.
I was going through a checklist of, I'm going to try rappelling and rock climbing this weekend. And then the next weekend, I'm going to skydive. And the next weekend, I'm going to, he's
Mm-hmm.
like, can you just like, do you have a death wish or something? Like, can you just chill?
The most intense
I
things to be
know,
doing on the weekend.
let me fly a stunt plane. I did all this
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, it was check,
Yeah.
check, check,
Yeah.
because it was really
Yeah.
expanding my comfort zone at the time. I was really
Yeah.
going through like a own personal like growth
Yeah.
process. But
Yeah.
I almost took it offensively when he was like, you need to read a book. Let me refer it to
Yeah.
you.
Right. 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 Because yeah, at that point you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all these great and exciting things. And this, like, he's
Right.
telling you to read a book. Great. But it was just slow down.
And I think
Give yourself space. Yeah.
if that advice had come from someone who was a couch potato, I wouldn't not
Yeah.
have taken the advice. But it came from a
Yeah.
man who is the most
Yes.
competitive person I've ever met in my whole life,
Yes.
who
Yeah.
always never seems happy with where he's at and wants more.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
for him to give me this advice, I took
Yeah.
it. I was like,
It
all
meant
right,
something.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe I can learn something. So
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
kudos to anyone that's, learning to be a recovering human doing and a human being,
Yes.
trying to be a human being more on the weekends.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a bit of an identity crisis when I jumped into coaching because I also just associated so much of my identity to my work and like being a tech executive, being a vice
Yeah.
president in tech and what that meant, especially as, being a woman who was able to climb the ladder
Yep.
and get to that level. And yeah, afterwards, even though starting my own company is a courageous thing to do and having consistent clients and, doing well,
Yeah.
at first I was like, oh, I just run this company. Oh, I just do this because I felt like a failure because I wasn't attached to
Right.
like a tech company when I'm actually doing something impressive myself. So
Mm-hmm.
stepping out and just creating your own identity is just, it's a
Well, that's
major reframe.
normal. Everyone goes through that identity crisis. Who am I really?
Yeah.
It's a great, great learning exercise to go into business for yourself. Even if you've got a job now, create the side
Yeah.
hustle, whatever. Always
Yes.
have that plan B in place, have that extra stream of income. But just giving yourself permission to have your own identity and your personal
Yeah.
brand, it reconnects you to yourself. It's the best
hmm
self-care exercise. I could highly recommend it. It's even in my
It is.
latest book, just permission to have that side hustle in the first place. And it's just,
Yes. Yeah.
it
You
lights
can
up
do
something
that.
inside of you, and it
Yes.
reignites that passion to not just learn more, but who am I really? And fall in love with yourself
Yes.
again, and all the
Yes.
parts, all the moving crazy
Yeah.
pieces. There's a lot of them. That's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool. Well, I want to
Yeah.
just kind of come to a close and some final thoughts. First and foremost, how can our audience connect with you to learn more? What's the best place to find you?
Yes. So I make it very easy. My website is workwithashleyr.com.
Nice.
And that's the name of my company. I write a weekly newsletter, and you can find my newsletter at newsletter.workwithashleyr.com.
Nice.
That's where I share a lot of tips for high achievers, ambitious people in their careers that are looking to get to the next level and maybe want some advice and perspective on how they may be able to do that. And then, like you mentioned, I do have a career diagnostic. You can find that on workwithashleyr.com.
Love it. And all of these links will be in the show notes. Make it easy for everyone to find you.
Yeah.
I
Sorry, I forgot one thing. My LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Ashley Rudolph.
we kind of did that plug in the front end, so it's all good. But we'll
Yeah.
make sure we get that in there too.
Yeah,
We're promoting
exactly.
LinkedIn. Are they giving us any kind of spiffs on the side
Are
here?
they? They should be. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely a great space to play. I love
Yeah.
it. Probably because I'm getting burned out with all the other cheesy platforms that seem to be at our disposal these days. And when you're really looking to grow in your
Yeah.
career and your mindset, it just is such a better space to play.
It is.
It's not a time suck or a doom scrolling habit.
Exactly. And if
More
you have your own
beneficial.
business, then, it's a great professional networking tool. I don't need to say it. We said enough of it in the
Yeah.
beginning, but
So I'm still blown away at the 1% people that post what.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Step it up. Stop being spectators and start being creators.
Yeah. There's a lot of lurking.
Yeah.
Lurking and learning.
That's with all the platforms, though.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great eye-opening experience. Any final thoughts that you want to give our audience before we close out for the day?
Ooh, final thoughts. You know what? I think the common thread across a lot of the things that we talked about is communication, and whether that's communicating with yourself and like checking in with what do you value, what's important to you, or what's driving your ambition, right? Or how you communicate and interact with others and the personal brand that you're shaping. And I think that leaders, if you are thinking about communication as a soft skill, it needs to be a priority, but it's so much more than a soft skill. It is something that is absolutely mandatory for anyone who's in a leadership role or aspires to be. So that's the last thing that I would leave this
And that one's my
your
favorite.
listeners with. Yeah.
That's the fourth C.
Yeah, it is. It is the fourth C. It is. And it's just so important.
Absolutely. And communication isn't just speaking, it's active listening, it's empathy. There's so many pieces and parts to communicating.
Yes. Some people, when they hear communication, they think it's talking. No.
Right.
It is not just talking.
It could just
There's
be
so many other
the way you
layers.
respond to an email, or like you mentioned before, talking over people, not reading the room and knowing to come at their level. Yeah. So many pieces and parts to that too. Yeah. Awesome, Ashley. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your words of wisdom. I'm sure our listeners have gathered just as much wisdom and some great reminders for myself. That's why I love these conversations. It kind of reminds you stuff that you've been putting on a back burner for a while.
Yes. And you know what? Sometimes I remind myself.
Right.
And I feel like
Yep.
I feel like I've learned so much from you and just hearing your stories and all the great questions that you asked. This was such a great conversation.
Digs all that out of that folder that's buried inside of you.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We will see you on the next episode on the Leadership Lounge.
Okay. Hi there, friend. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor and double check that you're subscribed or following. And if you've got a quick 30 seconds, it would mean the world to me if you could leave me a 5-star review and share what you specifically liked about this episode.